Defense wins championships, and today I'm bringing you my top 15 defenses for Week 14 fantasy football. And this is the last week before the playoffs, so this might be your chance to try to make that last-second push or guarantee your playoff bye. But today, we started off here in the S tier with defense, and my number one defense for this week, it is going to be the Denver Broncos as they are going up against the Las Vegas Raiders. And right now, the implied points allowed for the Denver Broncos is going to be 20 points to the Raiders. And this Raiders offense has looked absolute cheeks. Now, I'm going to say this. I own Ashton Genty and I own Brock Bowers in a ton of leagues. I wish to say that we could be putting those guys in this absolute elite tier of fantasy football players, but we can't because the offensive line for the Raiders is the worst in the NFL. It is absolutely terrible. And with the Raiders just continuing to have super low consistency, Chip Kelly gets fired. They bring in Greg Olsen, of course, to call plays. He called plays earlier on in the early 2020s. It's not great. And I think the play calling was better. I think they tried to get a little bit more like Brock Bowers kind of being in the short intermediate routes. I mean, Brock Bowers had 2 touchdowns. I just think this offensive line is going to really, really struggle with the Denver Broncos. They struggled with the Chargers defensive line. So give me the Denver Broncos as the number one team this week. If you own them, you're going to ride them going into Week 14. My number 2 defense in Week 14 fantasy football is going to be the Seattle Seahawks as they are going up against the Atlanta Falcons. Now, the Seattle Seahawks have kind of been this just plug-and-play defense. All season long, they've been getting the sacks. They've been getting the interceptions. They've been getting the turnovers. And there was a little bit of a stretch, maybe like week 11, where you were just like, I don't love the matchup. But then they kind of just showed they've been matchup proof. So Seattle definitely got to have them here versus the Falcons. Is Drake London going to be back in Week 14? We shall see. But I don't think that's really going to matter at all because the implied team total for the Atlanta Falcons is 19.5, with Seattle having a minus 3.5 point favorites. Like I said, the Falcons with just their low efficiency volume. I think Kirk Cousins is basically a statue back there, so they're going to be able to get the sacks. If they can get an interception, I think that's even better. But Seattle Seahawks, they have a great floor. They have a great ceiling. We just saw that this last week, how dominant the Seattle Seahawks can be week in and week out. And my third defense here in the S tier, it is going to be the Cleveland Browns going up against the Titans. We have absolutely been targeting the Tennessee Titans as an overall team that you want to be targeting because we know Cam Ward, he gets sacked. He throws interceptions, and he has not gone up recently against a defense as good as the Cleveland Browns and Myles Garrett and the crew. So for me right now, the Titans are currently implied team total of 16 points. The line is Cleveland -4. This is the lowest in total implied team totals of the slate for Week 14. So like I said, I just want to lean into the fact that the Titans are not going to be able to block Myles Garrett at all. Have Cleveland Browns here in the S tier. But if you've been enjoying the defensive videos, the kicker videos, the start-sit streams, the John Paulson and Addison podcast, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. We are on the way to 2,500 subscribers. We're actually on the way to 3,000 subscribers, and we want each and every one of you here as we try to make the push for the Fantasy Football Championship. But then we move on here into the A tier, and the A tier starts out with some strong starts. We got the Rams versus the Cardinals. Now, the Rams did not have a great day for Week 13. They let me down big time. They were absolutely giving up chunk play after chunk play to Bryce Young. Now, a little bit about it. They were away. I don't necessarily know what it was. They weren't able to get the pressures and the turnovers on Bryce Young. But right now, the implied team total for the Cardinals for Week 4 is going to be 21, and the line is -3 of force for the Rams. Now, I think this defense is going to come out to really play against Jacoby Brissett in this matchup. Main reason is they just got embarrassed. And I understand that you could look at the Cardinals and say, hey, that the Cardinals offense is just as talented as the Panthers. When you're talking Marlon Harrison Jr., Michael Wilson, Trey McBride, will Trey Benson be back? I just think the Rams are going to get up in this game, and it's just going to let the dogs eat in the blitz. So I am going back to the well. I have the Rams here as a strong start. I wouldn't be absolutely like super interested, or that's not the word. I wouldn't be super on the idea that the Rams are going to be a top 3 defense rest of the season, but I definitely think in the matchups, you can definitely be playing the Rams, and I like them here in the A tier. My defense number 5 here in the A tier, it is going to be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers going up against the Saints. Devin Neal got most of the work in Week 13 game, But when we're talking about it, it's pretty much just Chris Olave and Devin Neal. If the Tampa Bay Buccaneers can shut them down, which I understand, Tampa Bay Buccaneers had locked down the Cardinals, and then they kind of passed it on them in the second half. I think this could be good. The Saints have an implied team total of 20.5 points. The line is minus 1.5 right now for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as I'm recording this on Monday. I love this. I just love this matchup for Tampa Bay. Have to have them at number 5. Think they can get some turnovers on Tyler Shuck and the Saints. Now we move on to defense number 6, and it's going to be the Houston Texans. And the Houston Texans deserve to be in that same conversation as those top 3 defenses. Houston Texans have been absolutely electric over these last 2 weeks. They're going up against the Jaguars. Now, the Jaguars are kind of back at full health with Brenton Strange back in the mix, Brian Thomas Jr. back in the mix, where we're talking about Jacoby Myers, Brian Thomas Jr., Brenton Strange, Travis Etienne, Bashal Tootin in the backfield. So, and Trevor Lawrence is pretty mobile, so I think the idea that these defensive ends might struggle to have the same amount of like sack volume that they might have on like a Daniel Jones type, but they were sacking Josh Allen 2 weeks ago a ton. And so maybe that's kind of just me being a little bit more variance. Texans tend to generate turnovers, but like we said, with this point is allowed right now, the Jaguars are projected 22 points in this game. I just have the Houston Texans here at 6. I just feel like there's the range of outcomes that they should be in the S tier, but there's also just the range of outcomes that there's just kind of this middle tier defense. So I kind of just have them here. I think they're a really great floor play. I don't know what the high-end ceiling is in this game. Now we move on to defense number 7, and it's going to be the Baltimore Ravens going up against Steelers. Right now, the Steelers' implied team total is 19 points, and the reason it's so low is because Aaron Rodgers had that injury. We're going to have Mason Rudolph in this game, and Baltimore Ravens have absolutely been cooking on defense, getting better and better each and every week. And so, like I said, Ravens defense has a high floor for me in this game. They also end up here in the A tier. Now we move on to the B tier, and I would pray that you're able to get any of those teams in the S or A tier onto your defensive lineup heading into week 14. But if you can't, and we got to kind of, hey, maybe those are defenses are really well owned or they're not available in your league, then we'll kind of look to some of these in the B tier. And my B tier is kind of huge. We started off here with my defense number 8, and it's going to be the Tennessee Titans taking on the Browns. Shedeur Sanders has had his flashes, but he's also had his moments. And so for me in this game, Tennessee Titans, they do have a very good front 7. So if they can lock down the passing attack, maybe generate some turnovers off Shedeur Sanders in his 3rd overall start, you could look that way. That is high upside, but you also have to understand that the offense for the Tennessee Titans typically puts the Tennessee Titans defense at a disadvantage. And so that's just a little bit of worry and concern. But I do think there's massive upside, but there's also a really low floor for the Tennessee Titans. Number 9 for me is going to be Miami Dolphins versus the Jets. This was a matchup when we looked at this last week when I put it in my stash video, and I was like, hey, we want to target this because the Miami Dolphins are not very much owned in a lot of leagues. Plus, the Jets have been pretty bad. Well, Tyrod Taylor, they got their 3rd overall win this season in that Week 13 game, and the offense with A.D. Mitchell, with John Mechie, has started to kind of cook things up a little bit more. And so for me, I'm a little bit worried, and I would not have Miami Dolphins as high as I thought I was going to have them. Definitely sitting here as my defense number 9, with the implied team total for the Jets being only 17.5. But just knowing the way that this team's been playing, they've been fighting really hard for Aaron Glenn. I just have the Miami Dolphins here at number 9 because things could go wrong where they absolutely get up, they're able to blitz, they're able to get the turnovers in the second half. But there's part of me that this could be a really close game. And so I have the Miami Dolphins here at number 9. My number 10 overall defense here in the B tier, it's going to be the Pittsburgh Steelers versus the Ravens. Pittsburgh Steelers 2 weeks ago, absolutely electric fantasy football point output. But again, this offense with Mason Rudolph potentially starting in week 14, you're not going to feel great about it. And so you're worried a little bit about what are the situations that this offense is going to put the Pittsburgh Steelers defense in against a very capable and good Baltimore Ravens offense. Anytime you're going up against Lamar Jackson, there's always the concern. There's always the touchdown and interception upside that you do have with Lamar Jackson as he tries to scramble, as he tries to create things. And if you have the defense with a TJ Watt who's able to get around the edge and get those sacks, you're definitely looking into that. But for me, Pittsburgh Steelers here at number 10, can't put them any higher, even though they have been a pretty good defense. My defense number 11 is going to be the Philadelphia Eagles going up against the Chargers. Applied team total right now for the Chargers is 22.5. Justin Herbert, like we said, a little bit banged up, hurt and broke that hand. The Chargers continue to allow a ton of sacks, especially with the injuries to their main 2 tackles. Philadelphia Eagles should be able to eat and stop the run, even if Amari and Hampton's back. They're going to force the Chargers to throw. So if the Chargers can reduce sacks and, of course, throw a ton of touchdowns with Justin Herbert, then they should win the game, and this is a terrible defense to play. But there is the case to be made that the Philadelphia Eagles are going to get a ton of sacks, and if they are up, of course, in like the second half, end of the first half, they're going to put the Justin Herbert, and the way that the Justin Herbert and the Los Angeles Chargers have been throwing the ball around, they're definitely a chance that they could get a ton of turnovers. And so for me, I like this matchup here for the Philadelphia Eagles defense. Now, the Los Angeles Chargers defense is also going up against the Philadelphia Eagles. This is a huge primetime game. And for me, I am just I think this is a good matchup. The Chargers defense has been playing good, but I don't like going up against Jalen Hurts, going up against A.J. Brown, Saquon Barkley. You don't love that, but this is kind of where you start to get in the overall model just based on these matchups and based on this consistency. So I have the Chargers as my defense number 12. My defense number 13 is going to be the Kansas City Chiefs versus the Texans. C.J. Stroud came back. He looked pretty good. It could move the ball up and down the field. For me, this is really just a low ranking for the Kansas City Chiefs just because they haven't been able to absolutely demolish for defensive points. They've been a solid defense, but the offense hasn't been doing them any favors where they've had to really kind of play a lot of conservative prevent defense instead of being able to really blitz. And they've had some bad matchups over the last few weeks. So for me, I think Kansas City Chiefs, like if you're in a very, very desperate play, could be a decent play, but they're my defense number 13 this week. My defense number 14 this week, it is going to be the Green Bay Packers as they are going up against the Bears. We love these in-division, in-matchup games. This is going to be Sunday at 4:25. So we'll have to see what the weather impact is going to be. Like I said, I'm recording this on Monday where we don't necessarily know what the weather is going to be looking like on Sunday, but it's probably going to be cold. It's probably going to be cold, potentially even a little bit snowy. And the way that the Green Bay Packers are able to blitz and get after the quarterback with Micah Parsons and that front seven, definitely have to consider. So Green Bay Packers, definitely a good defense to consider. And then my last defense is potentially the Atlanta Falcons going up against Seahawks. Really, we get to this point, and I don't like any defense. So I just added Atlanta because they'd be my number 15. We saw Sam Darnold in this offense, like JSN, get shut down a little bit, but they do move the ball. They do still end up beating, of course, the Minnesota Vikings. And so for me, Sam Darnold, I don't like putting the Atlanta Falcons against them, but they do get a ton of pressure and they do get a ton of sacks. So that's kind of what puts them here at defense number 15. But if you like defensive rankings, if you like winning, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button as we are on the way to 3,000 subscribers. Appreciate each and every one of you, and I'll catch you on the next one.